Okay, hello everyone and welcome to another AMA by the Olympians. Today we're joined by some of the team from FortuneDAO. Hello guys, how are you?
Great.
Okay, so we'll begin by asking them a few questions about their project, and then we'll move on to the community round where everyone can ask the team any questions. So, okay, for starters, you guys are the first fork on the Cronos blockchain, right?
We are the first home fork on Cronos blockchain, so we are particularly bullish about Cronos chain itself, partially because like what we see in the success for Binance Smart Chain from Binance. So we are equally bullish on Crypto.com app. So that's why we decided when the Cronos chain is available, and we'll try as fast as possible to actually deployed that. So we are very early on Cronos chain. I guess we're in Cronos chain on the very first month of Cronos chain launch.
Okay, so what makes FortuneDAO unique compared to other forks of Olympus?
For FortuneDAO, we are always emphasizing on the part of beyond the form. So we are not just a normal standard Olympus DAO form. So if you head over to FortuneDAO today, you have seen that there's a lot of selection available, and one of them that's based right up on the menu bar is actually on the navigation bar is actually the stablecoin swap that we have. So what we envision for FortuneDAO to be is beyond Olympus DAO. What we do with the stablecoins bond is to provide liquidity for us to facilitate stablecoin swap. So our big plan is that we'll maintain the Olympus DAO bond mechanism, but on top of that, we provide a stablecoin swap. And what we hope from the stablecoin swap is to actually earn fees facilitating the swap between stablecoins, and then all these fees will go back to our Fort token holders.
All right, so you launched almost 2 months ago, right? What could you say you've learned since then? Because you're you're the first fork on Cronos, and you're one of the first that launched in this kind of chains, right? So what have you learned since then?
The challenge is that for a new network or a new blockchain like Cronos is when we first launched, there's approximately about the largest debt on Cronos chain is um, very simple, which people call it by the acronym VBS. When we launched, they only had about 4,000 debt users. So, uh, the biggest challenge is actually the number of users. And upon launch, we won't be able to have the kind of scale where if we have to launch on Avalanche or Phantom, we'll have that number of users to actually build up the treasury on. So on the treasury building phase, FortuneDAO didn't manage to build sizable treasury. But then again, because of the small community size, right, we are able to have a rather high staking ratio. So the most important part about Olympus DAO is on the 3-3 part, where the community and the users are encouraged to mint bonds and also stake. So right from the start, for our community, we have a fairly high, above average if we were to compare to other Olympus DAO forms. We have a very high staking ratio. We have a very high bond ratio as well. So it works out fairly well for us, even though we are like in a very new chain with not a lot of users on it.
Okay, so since you mentioned recently your stable swap, could you elaborate on how you plan to integrate that to your ecosystem? And I saw in one of your Medium that there could be an airdrop for holders. Is that correct?
So for stablecoin swap, what we are trying to solve in DeFi is actually the problem of liquidity mining. For a standard stablecoin swap, say for Ellipsis or for Nerve Finance on Binance Smart Chain, where they offer their governance token as a form of liquidity mining. This isn't something that we want to do because we want to use the advantage of Olympus DAO bonds. So what this Olympus DAO bonds do is that they provide the liquidity for our stablecoin swap. And then the fees from the stablecoin swap will go direct to holders of Fort tokens. So that's the difference. The difference is that instead of providing liquidity mining, we are using bonds to provide liquidity for our stablecoin swap.
Oh yeah. Sorry, no, I was just checking something else. I saw you recently partnered with Crystal Group. Could you tell us more what you're aiming for with that partnership, or how do you think it's gonna benefit you?
Right now, we'll break in the development into phases. So first off, we start off as normal Olympus DAO form. So for the on on the very first phase, right, as a normal Olympus DAO form, what we do is that we have staking, we have bonds. For that, once we build up our treasury from bonds, we use that gain to actually farm on Cronos. The good thing about being early on Cronos blockchain is that there's a lot of liquidity mining incentive. So right off from the first phase is that we can build up our treasury by participating in a lot of the liquidity mining programs that's active on Cronos chain, like VVS, Tectonic for lending, and that's for the first phase. So while we are waiting for development to take place, where we are about 2 months in on Cronos chain, and 2 months we have built governance, we have built stablecoin swap. While waiting for all this development to finish, what we do is that we take this coins, stable coins on our treasury and actually farm them on Cronos blockchain. And I find that the API returns on Cronos blockchain initially was really, really good. Say for stable coins, we are getting approximately 20-30% during the month of November and December. So that pays off really well. So all this farming where our community call it black hole is that initially we want to accumulate governance token, but we eventually change to be less risky. Uh, we actually farm with stablecoins instead to build up the stablecoins portion in lead to providing all this liquidity for our stablecoin swap.
Okay, so one last question before we move on to the community round. Since the year just started, what are your goals for this 2022? Where do you see your project going?
The roadmap ahead. So just now we covered about phases. The first phase is actually to build up treasury from Olympus DAO bond mechanism. So this is what we have done. And the next phase after we have a treasuries that we put them to use to farm on Cronos blockchain. All this farming information can be found on the black hole section on FortuneDAO website. Following which we partner with, like on the previous questions, that why do we have a partnership with Crystal Finance, is that Crystal Finance help us in auto compounding our farming on Cronos blockchain. We were to break the whole roadmap for 2022 into phases. So right now we have our stable swap online, is on the mainnet with not a lot of liquidity. So what we intend to do is how do we attract more liquidity to have a stablecoin swap that has the best exchange rate. what we do is that we are going to launch auto staking bonds. We are also looking into adapting and forking the new Olympus DAO V2 bonds as well. This is something that we are looking at. And then once we have all these bonds available, we are also looking into a much more sustainable way to have high APY, sustaining the high API through some of the popular mechanisms like vesting mechanism that Curve is using. So once that is done, we actually integrate all of them. So the stablecoin swap now have liquidity from the bonding mechanism. And for Fort token holders, they can enjoy the high APY returns from the vesting model. So we are taking the best from some of the DeFi 2.0 mechanism and try to make them into one.
All right. That was it for me. We can move to the community round now, where we can bring anyone to ask you any questions. Let's begin with we have David. You can talk.
Yep, thank you. Firstly, thank you for arranging the AMA Oracle and the team from Fortune. The question I had was, considering that Bitcoin isn't and the entire market is currently in a bear stage, what do you feel about like launching at this particular period? And do you think there's any uh, advantage to it, or do you think you might delay it if the entire thing continues? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I think first off, we're really lucky to launch in November where Bitcoin really had a good pricing. So looking forward, where if we were to enter a bear market or Bitcoin price falls, is that when the Bitcoin price falls, it doesn't affect the amount of treasury that we have because unlike other Olympus DAO where they take in other native token, say for if a fork is on Phantom network, they will take in Phantom. If a fork is on Avalanche, they'll take in Avalanche token. So fortunately for us, since we are early on Cronos chains, is that the Oracle for Cronos is out the token, the native token is CRO. So for Crow, we don't have an Oracle yet. So we are unable to provide bonds in other kind of tokens that rely on having a need for Oracle. So when Bitcoin price fall, our treasury is actually not bigly affected by the market price action. So for now, the bonds that are available for us is USDC bonds, DAI bonds. We're also looking to have USDT Tether bonds soon. So if you can see from all these bonds, they are all stablecoins bonds. So our treasury is built on top of stablecoins, which will go unaffected in a bear market, or even if Bitcoin falls, it really doesn't affect the stablecoins value in our treasury. So what I'll see that going into a bear market, our treasury is intact. Nothing's affected. The only thing that's affected is probably our whole black hole mechanism where we put our stablecoins into farming, because I'm pretty sure during a bear market, returns on stablecoins you will fall a lot. So that's probably the only part that's affected.
Okay, thank you for the question, David. We can answer a few from the text chat. Meanwhile, let's see if you find anything interesting you want to answer.
All right. For another question I had from Rob, that how does the treasury ensure that even bear period and contractions won't shut down the protocol? So for the protocol itself is that for now we are actually from the build up phase, right? And from November after we launch, we actually farm. All this is actually quite sufficient for the team. The team doesn't have a really big, it isn't a really big team. So fortunately for operation wise and manpower wise, it's very sustainable. And for that, right, we are relying on much of the yield and to sustain our operations, day-to-day basis operations. And next up for another question that we had is that what about partnerships? So early on the network is that when you are live, right, there's only more and more dApps that are going online. So fortunately for us, I think the good part is that some of the community managers on Cronos put in some effort to gather all these developers into chats. So we are able to form partnerships from there. One of which is, of course, the Crystal Finance partnership that we had to farm and help us auto compound. We're also in talk with some of the DEXs. Our liquidity pairs hosted on Cronos Swap. We're also looking into the possibility of us raising liquidity for the stable swap through the DEX's launchpad. What I find so special about Cronos blockchain's DEXs is that they come with, almost all of them come with a launchpad. You can look at EVS, you can look at Crodex, you can look at Chronoswap, you can look at MMF, all of them have launchpad. And we are in talk with them to actually explore the possibility that whether we can raise or stablecoin liquidity from the launchpad itself. So this is still subjected to governance. One thing about FortuneDAO is that anyone can propose a governance vote on chain, posted on Snapshot. And if a user is unable to meet the criteria to propose a new vote on Snapshot, the team is actually active on Discord. You can let us know what kind of vote you want to host, you want to propose, and we actually do up the proposal for and put it up to Snapshot.
I see a lot of people on chat asking about marketing. Do you have any words on that?
For marketing wise, right off, we think that the returns of marketing would be great if we were to use native marketing, native marketer. What I mean by that is that we actually use marketing from like Chronos News. So when we launched our stable swap, Chronos News was able to report it. We are also working together with Chronicle. Chronicle is also another news site that's available on Chronos. So people who are on Chronos will know that if they want alphas on Chronos chain, they will have to join or follow all this news site on Chronos that are specially catering for Chronos news, Chronos updates, etc. So that's one part of the marketing effort that we have. Another part is that we are working together with some YouTubers. You can actually find some YouTube videos on FortuneDAO. This is something that will really help because we find that video visualization is much better than say Twitter. I think because some of the processes from what we learned from our users is that first off, Cronos being a new chain, it's hard to, if you're coming from other chain, the first question is that how do I bridge into Cronos chain? So we partner with some of the YouTubers. A lot of their videos will be about how do users bridge over to Cronos chain, and then how do they get hot token? How do they get started on FortuneDAO? Like where do they buy the token? How do they swap? How do they get the best rate on DAI? Because today our liquidity pair for our Fort token is in Fort DAI token, and getting DAI token on Cronos chain itself, since a few weeks ago there wasn't any stable swap available, so getting DAI onto Cronos chain was a challenge. So all these YouTube videos turned out to be really, really well on getting new users on board. Another point on marketing as well, I think since we have like used up like all these channels for Cronos chain is that we actually have the wrapping mechanism for the rebase token. And for people who are aware of Olympus DAO wrap token is that other than this benefit of helping in tax calculation, wrap token actually help to cross multi-chain network. And from the partnership questions that we are actually in a discussion, in talks with relation with DAO governance, both that we are able to spend part of the treasury to actually buy into a bridging service, we can actually get the wrap Fort token out of Cronos chain. And once we are out of the Cronos chain, we can work with more marketing and marketing partners to actually promote FortuneDAO beyond Cronos chain itself. Next question that I will be answering is about the inspiration from Kovacs and Tokuma. One thing that we believe in DeFi 2.0 is on protocol own liquidity. So we feel that for liquidity mining, it's a very mercenary process where people, right, where DeFi users will tend to have the tendency to go after the best APY and best yield. So it becomes a problem where if our APY and yield falls, people will just remove the liquidity. Therefore, the whole concept of protocol own liquidity stands out because the protocol retain the liquidity. And that's the part that we actually like about Olympus DAO is that through the bonding mechanism, the protocol owns the liquidity and we don't have to resort to mercenary competition between protocols to give really, really good API and hope that user stays forever. So that's part we like about protocol own liquidity. And another part about Kovacs is that we like it's particularly about curve that we feel that if protocol own liquidity was to have a vesting mechanism to go with the high API, it will prevent a lot of big fluctuation in the token price. As you have known for Olympus DAO forks, the price of the token tends to swing very violently because of the yield rates very high, and therefore it also depends now on the liquidity level provided by the liquidity pair. So what we intend to do is to have a less violent price action, and to do so, what we learn from the development around on the DeFi's during this period, I think we can see that a lot of protocols are going into the vesting model. And we intend to combine vesting model together with protocol own liquidity and together with sustainable yield from having a stable swap. So we are trying to combine all three together. So first of all, we are trying to have protocol own liquidity. Second, we are trying to have a vesting model for sustainable yield. And the third thing is having a stablecoin swap to have what I call a fundamentally good yield on fees. Next up, the next question that I'll be looking at from Spartan is that will you be looking to investing the treasury into other projects to grow it up? Yes, we will be looking into other form of projects to actually grow the treasury amount because currently the majority of the stablecoins on our treasury is being used on liquidity mining on Cronos chain only. One of the options that we have explored is to actually bridge the stablecoins out from Cronos chain and to explore better opportunity out of Cronos chain. So one of the limitation that we have is not on whether do we do so or not, but the question is, a lot of users will then ask, how do we know this is the best opportunity available? So that's when we go back to our governance process, that users can propose how we best use our treasury. And another point is that we hope to have like DAO members approval whenever we spend a part of the treasury. Say we were to swap some of the stablecoins for other tokens that's not stablecoins. That's when we go through the governance process.
Alright, if any of you has mic, you can request to talk. We can ask you and let you speak to the devs directly. Otherwise, we can pick a few more questions from the text chat. Okay,
Yes,
now we can hear you.
all right. I apologize for that. I really tried to talk. I spoke for a long while, but you couldn't hear me. Anyway, any questions? I am back. Let's see if Dev can come back.
Okay. I invited him to join as a speaker. Maybe he can, if he accepts, he can talk again.
Yeah, I think he just left. He'll be back. So yeah, I like the idea of David about the accelerator program. Yeah, why not? I mean, these are proposals that can be submitted on our Discord, and then yeah, we can also put it on a vote, and with the government's vote, we can put it on. So yeah, interesting idea, David. Yes, absolutely. The low value lock on the Cronos blockchain makes it very hard to grow. This is why we built small community that stakes DAS 3.3. Like our staking ratio shows, 86%, and we all committed just to grow as slow as the Cronos blockchain. But yeah, if there is another bull run, some liquidity flowing to the Cronos blockchain, then yeah, probably we'll go fight to get some growth. Absolutely.
Okay. Sure. We can close the audio channel and we'll continue through text.
You have to. And yeah, because we are having some audio problems, guys. Really sorry for that. We'll continue on the typing. Thanks for having us. We'll be there
no
in the chat.
worries. Thank you both for coming.
Cheers, guys.
And we can continue this on text.